Hello, good evening, everyone. Welcome to PECB Anti-Bribery Conference 2022. I will moderate this session with the topic Shell Companies, How to Combat Money Laundering. And in this second day virtual events, my name is Nadia Sarah. I'm a founder and principal advisor at Bright Initiative Partnership, PT Mitra Prakasa Cemerlang from Indonesia. With me, excellent panelists. They are experts from many countries. USA, Egypt, Kenya, and France will talk about their insight and sharing their expertise and experience handling the shell companies. So we give you opportunities to ask to all panelists, give your comment and question in chat box, and I will read it in the last session. I would like to introduce you all the panelists before we start. So we have the first panelist is Ghislaine Bodmazort. Hello, good evening.
Hello.
So Ghislaine is a financial crime expert at Lemonway, France. So the second panelist, I would like to say hello, Horat Afsat.
Hi.
Hi, he is a founder and CEO of UGR Next Gen Compliant Expert from United States. The next one is Sheriff Gallagher, Information Security Governance Risk and Compliance Consultant in TSS Egypt. Hello, Sheriff.
Hi.
How are you?
Hi, everyone. I'm fine. Thank you, Nadia.
And the last panelist is Stella Makona. She is Chief Operating Officer at Sentinel Africa Consulting, Kenya. So we have all these experts around the world. So the topic today is shell companies. I would like to ask first to Ghislaine Bodmazort. She has many years experience as a consultant and regulatory and supervisory affair manager. And she gives a lot of advice on ethics, anti-corruption, financial crime, and compliance. She also has experience in internal audits and advises in compliance audit and investigative audits, as well as fraud and risk management project. So, Ghislaine, my first question, we really interested about this topic. The shell company, why this topic is so important and how to prevent the misuse of shell entities. Can you explain for us? Thank you.
Hello, everyone. So I would say that it's very important because recently we had many scandals and that brought the highlight on this topic. So shell companies have been misused for years. I will give my perspective in Europe mainly. And we do have the EU Commission that recently proposed a directive to draft it. So they drafted a directive actually to give more regulation framework on the use of shell companies for many reasons. The risk that they have, I would say, in the AML TFT that they provide, but also on the tax avoidance and the tax evasion, which is something that we sometimes forget, but it's quite linked actually to the money laundering in the scheme that they use and the way that that it can be used by the service providers, because you can launder money and in the same time launder and tax avoid the money by the shell entities. So actually today we have this proposal that has been quite well welcomed, that is called Unshell proposal in Europe. This Unshell proposal is based on three criteria: that all the, I would say, the shell companies that do not have a nature of a company income first, and do not have a proportion of cross-border transaction from the company business, and whether the company management is outsourced or not performing in-house. We will, I would say, now categorize them as a very misuse of the shell company, which will help in many other ways, because actually in Europe we had already some regulation which are quite well known. For example, DAXIS, which help to spot all the big transactions that happens between cross-borders country. Mainly, for example, I would give Luxembourg because it's one of the open lux scandal that happened on the funds. But in the same way, we had recently actually another directive that has been proposed, and the package is quite reinforcing the fighting against AML and the tax evasion. It's the sixth anti-money laundering directive that has been recently proposed and has been enforcing predicate offenses, which includes actually tax crime. And inside tax crime, they do actually spot tax avoidance and tax evasion, which will have. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Nadia.
No, just continue, please.
Help in the coordination and communication in exchanging information, so the automatic exchange in information that we have in Europe. And in the same way, it will help on the FIU that has been communicated, so the STR, SR. It will help by more harmonizing the information that are shared, and I would say that they're enforcing in the same way an authority, so it will be called the AMLA, Authority Money Laundering, Anti-Money Laundering Authority in Europe, which will help to harmonize the information and crack down a bit of the bank secrecy that we have in the tax haven that we have in Europe. In the same way, I would like to remind to all our attendees that we are in Europe really keen on this new regulation, because we believe that first to prevent the misuses of challenges comes with the regulation, and then with the framework that will be applied, which is mainly, I would say, the responsibilities of the front line of defense, which is the front, which is actually the relationship manager, because without them we can't do a good KYC, which we can't do a CDD, which include actually all the other ways that can come from the control in the framework.
Okay, that's a good point. So we heard about so many scandals about shell companies, Panama Papers, Pandora Papers, LuxLeaks, and so how have these scandals have strengthened the regulation on the shell entities and their AML safety risks? How do they do with this regulation?
Well, the European Commission has already implemented and established the fifth anti-money laundering directive that obliged all the EU member states to have what we call a UBO register. Will help actually. So this UBO register helps in many ways, because you can communicate the information on any UBO between the 27 states within Europe, which it means that you have more communication. So that is the first step that happened already. Then now with the new adoption of the 6th AMLD, we have they are introducing other ways, which is first, they are increasing the legal scope of entities that are obliged to be submitting UBO, because today we have the new, I would say, crowdfunding platform, crypto asset that were not within the scope, which today they have to. So we will have more enforcement in the UBO, which actually for a shell company, when you have the UBO, the transparency around all the information, that helps to say that actually it's not misused, that there is an economical rationale behind that. And I believe how Pandora Papers, OpenLux, they strengthen the regulation, really in focusing within this customer due diligence and UBO register.
Okay, so you've mentioned about what we can do, and so what do you think about the due diligence? How due diligence can be the main component to establish a proportional AML response? What do you think about it?
Well, I think that, as I earlier just mentioned, that the front is very important. So we need a very strong front line, and it's very important in any ways for any AML program. So if you have the front line, which will communicate and threaten the information that they get, then you have a proper KYC, which is very important, which is plus on top of that, I would say that the KYC has to include the source of wealth and the source of fund, which is today very difficult in many activities. It's not only retail, we can't only stigmate private banking. It's really very important for all the system to build in the front line the compliance and be aware of it. I know that relationship managers, they do not really enjoy that because that's not their job. They will tell you, my bonus is not literally underlying on the KYC of the customer. But still, it is actually the base of a good KYC, because then we can assess as a compliance officer if it's a very high risk due diligence, if there is some red flag, how can we mitigate them? How do we control them? And then we can even implement specific scenarios for the transaction monitoring. We can even screen the person and get our own red flag. But if we do not have the proper information with the collaboration with the front line, the second line can't do really the good job. We can do only the job by the information that is being shared. And that is something that we are trying to push. I mean, everyone has the same. I think the front line and the second line have already this kind of discussion and try to collaborate all together.
Okay, that's very interesting. And let's hear from France. We go to the United States. I will greet Howrat Afsar. How are you, Howrat?
I'm good. Thanks for asking, Nadia. Thanks for having me here.
I would like to introduce Mr. Howrat Afsar. He has long experience, 20 years more in AML and KYC compliance, financial crime regulation, and he also have prior founding in UGR and have various leadership roles at Thomson, Credit Suisse, HSBC, and banking, I guess. Long track. And then I will also explain about Mr. Afsar is also has a postgraduate finance in from Berkeley and then University in Geneva. So with your experience and expertise, Howard, can you give more insight about the modern technology? Gislen has mentioned about the financial kind of thing in this new world today, crowdfunding and many things. What do you think about it? How the modern technology can help to identify the shell companies?
Sure, absolutely. So thanks for your question. I think I will just say that for the last few years, we've been very immersed in the digital transformation from the fintechs or the crypto businesses moving forward. And obviously, today, the threats or that we're facing are becoming more and more sophisticated. You know, criminals or those who use shell companies for illegitimate purposes are using more sophistication. So for all innovation that moves forward, there's also a sophistication in terms of threats that are moving forward. So I think that modern technology is key. And today in the larger regulatory technology space from the vendor side, there's more than 4,000 vendors out there. And having smart technology with leveraging with artificial intelligence, machine learning, data analytics, and many other aspects linked to leveraging with the blockchain technology could obviously help in deterring and protecting from a money laundering perspective. But having said that, I think the modern technology, there's not one modern technology that fits all. It has to fit the operating models of the platforms, and sometimes there's a disconnect and between the founders of the companies and the regulatory technology and the regulatory framework and the legislative framework, which do not always travel at the same speed. So I think it's very important to get different verticals of those solutions that are offered, from the identity management controls, where focus especially on the platform around biometrics, the identity verification on the onboarding side that helps for the KYC, AML, anti-fraud detection, to the transaction monitoring that are real time with RESTful API that flag unusual patterns of transaction that shell companies could be using. And so I think all these solutions have to really glue into the operating models and the stage of these fintechs, and obviously working in a framework that has to comply with domestic regulations, but also the recommendations of the FATF to make that happen.
So mentioned a lot of things about the modern technology and kind of thing. So what about fintech and crypto business? What is the challenges? Because everyone said that it's a crypto era. How the share companies taking disadvantages or disadvantages for them?
Yeah. Obviously, we've seen a real momentum in the fintech space the last few years, and today, we're having even just on the decentralized finance, more than 100 billion contracts values blocked, and so that means that it's just pushing forward. But at the same time, if we talk on the crypto environment, the legislative framework is not the same from a country to another. We don't have a homogeneous landscape. Some are very more crypto friendly, and those are not. So I think you have to work across those multi-jurisdiction and have an approach that makes sense. So I think the challenges for those fintechs, generally speaking, is that they have to navigate through the complexity of the regulatory environment, and they're very much at the early stages, at least, focused on their growth and development, getting funding, getting access to their growth or their product. And very often they don't have access to the subject matter expertise. And the last few years, as UGR, we've been helping, those fintechs get access to the knowledge, the collective knowledge, to help them go through the next stage, and so that they could holistically, with subject matter expertise, get the access with the right technology on a holistic level to mitigate the risk and find appropriate AML measures in place on top of their AML programs.
So furthermore, I mean, to deeply insight from you, what is the key point? Why the KYC or AML in crypto exchange is really important? I mean, you've mentioned the technology and the all the things that you stated. So no one, I mean, there's a lot of leaks, I guess. I don't know, I'm not an IT person, but why we really need KYC and AML in this crypto exchange? Is it really risky, or what do you think about this?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think KYC on a general standpoint is required, regarding the regulations you're facing across the world, with tweaks and here and there from different parts of the world. But having a knowledge of your customers, or doing the risk assessments, it is crucially important to know who you're doing business with. And shell companies have been, using or circumventing sanctions or other things because of the lack of KYC process or KYC solution. So I think coming to the fintechs or some of the cryptos around KYC is that the level of risk is somehow different. There are vulnerabilities into those platforms. And so having said that, and because we are in a developing environment in terms of regulations, so you need to have, for those platforms, the right technology that is in line with the level of risk. And the level of risk for those platforms that you mentioned are linked because of the anonymous side that could exist and that have been misused, where scandals have populated in those exchanges, and also the transaction speed that could happen from a wallet to another when you transfer, and that creates a level of supplemental risk. And so having the right AML and CTF checks in place will just would help you to mitigate that. And I think, just generally speaking, you just have to be more granular in terms of your KYC methodology from the traditional side. The compliance officers have obviously the years of experience going forward, but they have to really go at sometimes very granular level, understanding the technology of those platforms and working with the developers and working with other teams so that they become very agile and very fast in counter acting for the threats that these exchanges or these platforms could create.
Okay, interesting. So, as you mentioned, Horat, I will say I will stop here first because I will ask other expertise. You've mentioned about the needs of subject matter expertise and technology. So we have Sheriff Gallagher. He is a IT guy from Egypt, Information Security Governance and Risk Compliance Consultant in TSS Egypt, and I don't know where Sheriff in Egypt or Saudi Arabia. I don't know.
I'm from Egypt, but I'm now in Saudi Arabia. I'm working as a consulting for one of the biggest banking sector and governance of Saudi Arabia now.
Oh, interesting. And you also a lecturer at the Arab Academy for Management, Banking, Financial Science, and also auditor, excellent assessor training. Oh, long track record. So, Mr. Galal, my
Yes.
first question for you, as Horat has mentioned that the current technology, the digital transformation. So, what what is your opinion about how shell company use different of cybersecurity cross-cut laws? We have different countries, different regulation, different platform. What do you see from this perspective?
Yes, there is a lot of different in cyber security cross-cut laws. It's easy now with the technology, as we say it, as a technical, just Google it. If you Google it, you will find many agents known as registered agent. They will
Hmm.
help you so easily to establish or to implement your shell company or corporated so easy. They do it online, they do it through phones, they do it even through mobile. This agent will do the file paperwork for you, they
Hmm.
pay the fees for you, they will do with the register authority on business of behalf of you. This is so easy, this is done so easily because now the user technology register or establish this shell company requires little bit of personal information, and they do the restricted of data privacy and data privacy laws. This is you only need is the identity of the registration agent and beneficiary. Sometimes even sometimes for this ownership, the company didn't hire someone as a shell company. They just have someone what we called nominee directors to put their names there. No one is there because all is automated. Everything is IT. No one check. You just put some names. Even for more secure layers, this shell company start to make layers, subsidiary of shell company, one after one after one. So it's been layers of companies. And maybe as Ghazlan said, there is some countries is allowing this so easily because it's illegal. So they'll bet the company here and the company another side. This means officially the shell company due to cyber security law is belong to another shell company which is are located overseas or in another country. This allows the shell company to create high level of security for themselves. After they do this in different countries, because of the different in cybersecurity laws, this protects the owner from being investigated by any one countries. You have to collect all these countries together, which is you have different laws, so you can do it. And many countries we can find this model where is there is a lax and cooperation requirement with restricted privacy law about the information of the owner. I can give you some example like Switzerland, Cameron Island, Bahamas, United States, Nevada, like example, Luxembourg. So the criminal using this broadcast of cybersecurity law to build this model. and this is how they take it from IT perspective.
Oh, okay. So talking more about the cyber security, what is the efficacy of the controls of the cyber security that against the money laundering? Uh, what do you think about it?
Okay, this is a very good question because cybersecurity controls, we have many different kind of cyber information security controls, and mm, there is a little bit difference between information technology and cyber technology. And most of the people was dealing with information technology, but now the new trend in the world is the cyber security. And we, as I told you, we have many controls. We have a lot of hardware. As Howard said, we have like 4,000 vendor which give hardware and software, many tools. We have our SOC with Security Operations Center. Maybe some organization have their own SOC, others maybe have SOC as a service, and so on. But in the end of the day, all this should give us what I can call is red flags. What red flags? I think each organization have to build its own red flags by combining both the enforced local cybersecurity controls from the governance or from the country and its business need. By doing this, we don't just depend on the tools. It's automated. There is red flags. No, a human factor in this is very important. We have to consider it, to analyze it. As Howard said, and Razlan, the compliance manager is the one who is getting blame all the time because he has to take that decision. There is some recommended controls should be taking side by side with these tools. Don't depend on tools. One of them, as Howard said, is the risk assessment. It's very important to make a risk assessment for many things. Misuse of legal person. We have to ensure the information is accurate and up to date. We have to ensure that we have a mechanism for legal authority to access this information. Maybe they have the information and it's updated, but the legal authority didn't take it at the right time. So I will get blamed on this because also we have to build some mechanism to monitoring the information or the quality of the information we get it from the other countries. Sometimes what is a high number of transaction, what is considered high number of transaction in my country, maybe in other country it's not a high number of action. We have to understand this, the complexity of financial transaction, how to comply. Unusual behavior we have in dealing some financial asset for new company that has no liability and buy a huge number of assets, how they do it. Maybe you have to analyze the news and the media about this company, about its directors. Is there any director of it in the watch list? And also, which is good from her to mention KYC. When I'm trying to know my customer, I have also to know is there is a high risk customer. I don't have to know this, but I have to make a risk assessment about them, about the high risk. I think at the end of the day, the analysis and the understanding of this red flags, which is coming from both my business need and my local cyber controls, will enhance the cyber security controls against money laundering activities.
Yeah, that's very very important, and with the many kind of types of financial kind of thing, and there's also digital currencies. So what about digital currency? How the money laundering using this technology and platform? Can you mention more?
Yes. As you know, digital currency is using encryption and anonymous system. This make governance prevented to accessing or tracking because they depend when the dark web or this technology of encryption built it through Navy in 2009. It's built for two reasons. hides the ID and hides the location. So if we try to track someone, we don't have his ID or its location. It's so hard, and it was military technology at the first, so it's hard. So almost there is no way to track it. But even we might be able to track it, the cost is very high, and the human resource required for this task is rare. You can't find it. With digital currency, no need to carry a big bag for your money. You just put your small USB in your bag. Even you don't need to do it. You can use internet wallet through your mobile. So you just put your mobile in pocket. You have millions or milliards or billions or whatever the number in your pocket. No need. You no need to carry something to do it. This is make it easy. Many websites in the dark web doing this for you very easily, and I think it's a very famous Silk Road website. If you know the story, FBI in America was trying to catch him for 2 years with no reason, but they catch him after he make a mistake. So all this technology didn't get him. He just make a mistake. In these 2 years, he clean or make a money laundry for 1.2 billion dollars. He earned almost 18 million dollars out of this, so it's almost $1 million. It's very good job for him, actually. um, uh, because digital currency offer a combination of anonymity and easy to use. It has the ability to jump over international borders and regulations. There is no regulation to use it. Many countries it's allowed to use digital currency without a law. It's you can use it. It's just you can use it. No one ask you for anything, and they use many different technologies with digital currency. For example, you can mix between Bitcoin mixing service and the Bitcoin exchange. uh, Bitcoin remixes typically provide the customer with newly generated Bitcoin address. So I give you the Bitcoin and you just mix it, you give me a new Bitcoin. No one know it's coming from there and the going is from there. No one can track it because no. And you just put some fees, supply the customer after deducting the mixing fees. So at the end, added some random ways, fees applied. This mean this transaction will be look like a legal transaction. At the end, they can hide their assets. What I can say about digital currency at the end is it's a heaven gift for money laundering criminals. Digital currency.
Interesting. Okay, so thank you very much for your sharing, Mr. Garal. So I will move to the ladies here. Stella, how are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm just enjoying the discussion.
Yeah, it's very interesting topic. Yeah. Stella Makona CBU is Chief Operating Officer at Sentinel Africa Consulting from Kenya. So we can hear from others' perspective from Kenya. Her experience related to risk management and process improvement, business continuity, and disaster recovery along information security management as well. Ms. Simiyu is also the chairlady of the Business Continuity Institute from East Africa. So, Stella, we heard all these experts has mentioned about the importance, about the advantage of information technology, about the controls, about the trends, the digital currency, and then what do you think about the anti-money laundering control that we have to have? The keys that should be or must apply to manage the risk of the shell company. Can you explain more about it, Stella?
All right. So thank you so much. And I will actually be doing more of a wrap up of what all the panelists have come up with. So Gizen talked about the weak regulatory framework that maybe does not incorporate all elements of AML. Sheriff brought out the aspect of new companies out there, fintechs and cryptocurrency, and this type of new technologies are making it more, shell companies, it is just an open game for them. So how can you basically, just manage the risk around this? The first thing is always the tone at the top. So what exactly is your policy? And, regulatory comes in, and the fact that these are new technologies comes in. So where the regulatory framework is weak, you might find that there are some institutions that, yes, have a high risk in terms of shell companies, but are not necessarily regulated to have AML frameworks. So these companies, while they might not be regulated, need to come up with AML policies that are strong. They need to have a strong governance structure. I don't know how many fintechs out there. I know there are quite a number of fintechs existing in Kenya that really don't have, a compliance officer there, and that really presents a big risk to them. So the first thing is to set the right tone and, create the policies, have at least an AML policy. The second thing is, from your AML policy, then you need to understand your customer. And when you're talking about understanding your customer, now you would come in and say, we need to have a proper risk-based approach to it. So just as Sheriff had said, in my part of the continent, probably $10,000 is something critical. But probably if you go to Saudi Arabia, that is pocket change. So how
Yes.
do you assess the risk basically? And when it comes to KYC, you might not be required to collect um, that much information if you're not a regulated entity. So what I usually say is it's easier to do the right thing first rather than to clean up. So rather than many people say, okay, I'm not regulated, so I don't really need to comply to this. So as long as I collect the minimum, it's fine. I would say look at the risk you're carrying, and then really put in controls, especially in regards to KYC, to cater for that risk. Notwithstanding, especially here in Africa, you might find that there are some gaps. So, for example, they might be, um, let me say, not well developed frameworks for how I would know my customer. So in that case, what Gizen brought up is key, where you find that it will be the responsibility of the relationship managers, it will be the responsibility of the people out there selling to find out more about their customers, to visit their customers, and just be able to record, I visited this customer, I saw that he's doing one, two, three. So I'm able actually to verify exactly, what this customer is doing. Now, you might not be able to do that for everybody, but then again, that's where your risk-based approach comes in. The third thing I'm going to mention was mentioned by Howard, and in terms of transaction monitoring and having the right tools in place. Now, having the right tools is necessary, as well as them being configured appropriately. So you might have, the latest tools, but what is happening is that they're pushing just too much data that you're not humanly possible able to review. So making sure that you are constantly tuning your monitoring tools to be able to give you the right data, and being able to actually go into that data and see, is this an actual, is this something that needs investigation, or is this a normal transaction? So there has to be a combination there between having the right data and then having the right tuning processes, just to make sure that the technology you're using is actually giving you the insights that you require. Lastly, I will talk about training, and training is very necessary at all facets of the business. So from your top management needs to be trained, the people at the front line need to be trained, and your compliance officers need to be trained, so that you have a holistic approach as regards, just making sure that your AML and your AML risks are well catered for. So, Nadia, thank you so much for for the
Yeah, that's
opportunity.
so the tools, the right people, the top management, all you've mentioned is very important. But how's the information security linkage and interconnection between that? So what do you think about it, Stella?
So when it comes to information security, as our panelist Sheriff noted, from the very first, when you're onboarding a customer and the type of information that you're connecting, you are faced with a number of information security risks, so such as identity theft. So can somebody be able to, onboard on your platform, and you think that this person is, somebody else, and yet turns out to be another person? So how can you verify that the identity that this person gives you is an actual identity? When it comes to the transaction monitoring systems, um, access control becomes quite key, because you can find that you can have set up the very best rules to be able to stop certain transactions from happening, and those transactions can be rendered null and void simply by somebody changing a rule. So how have you then looked at things to do with access control, and people protecting their passwords, making sure that their identity is not taken over, and rules that you have set to be able to manage AML CFT risks are not then negated?
Hmm. Okay, so we have all the panelists give their insight, and then I have a lot of questions from participants here, and I would like to hear more from all of you guys. Would anytime possible to use digital audit pieces of evidence for combating fraud or money laundering? Are there any state-of-the-art audit tools available? Maybe I would like to start with Ghislaine. You're the audit ladies here. What is your insight about this, Ghislaine?
Well, if I understand well, the question is that is there any audit tool that can be used? Well, to be fair, I've been working with internal audit tools, so I'm not sure I can help on that.
Mm-hmm.
However,
Okay.
I believe that I'm sure that there are providers, but the companies for whom I worked, they had their own audit tool where you could upload the documentation and have the referential and all the process.
Okay, maybe some of you have experience about this. Horat or
Okay.
Sheriff?
Can do
Yes,
it.
I will help Ghazlan this. Audit techniques are the same, whatever you are going to use a tool or not a tool. But
Mm-hmm.
to use a tool all the time for money laundering, maybe as a Stella, it's you need a human being. In fact, in acting, you may have the right tools, but you don't have the right configuration. So even you are using an audit tool, you need the human fact, because there is many observations, interviews, and talking from people is gathering. So audit in money laundering or fraud or anything is like any kind of audit. It needs human beings besides the tool. uh, Collecting the information, there is many of artificial intelligence tools, many of learning machine tools with gathering this information and try to gather it together to give you something. But at the end of the day, this red flags, it need a human being, because maybe transaction in my country is different, so it's money, it's a good thing for me. And his the question is there an audit tools? Yes, there is many audit tools, but at the end you need the expert and you need the human activity with these tools to make the right configuration. And even with the right configuration, the right eye on these flags, it will come from human beings, not from the tools. So I don't recommend to put your organization in risk with using a tools without the right person to run these tools.
Well,
Yeah,
if I
Yeah.
I would just maybe add up to the very interesting input from Sharif on that, is that maybe on terms of the state of the art, for the digital aspect of audit. There are vendors out there, or at least those that are working on maybe leveraging the blockchain technology, the digital ledger, to record results, the fingerprints on that ledger, so that obviously, you have the audit methodology that are in place, but maybe the results or the reporting could be used through leveraging on those digital technologies on the blockchain. So this is something that for other aspects do exist. I'm not personally an audit professional, but I guess that if we take that aspect to the audit space as well, it should be transferable.
If I add for the tool, actually, I do agree with the Sheriff that we need the human being behind that, because actually when you make an audit, you need to see the red flag, and the red flag need analysis skills. So you need to have a synthetic analyzing skills for that, which will help you for the transaction, for the documentation, to see if it's a false, a fraud, or it's a forged document. You need human eye. So even though when you have a tool, it will be helpful for the aggregation, it will be helpful to do the research. If you have a keyword, that would be helpful for any investigation, for example, that you may have, but and maybe for the documentation. But then you really need still to work with auditors, proper auditors.
That's interesting about the audit. So we need the tools, we still need the person, the man behind the gun. So not only about the tools, for sure. And I will move to the other question. So, what are the vulnerabilities in the growing markets of cryptocurrency? And what is the aspect of associated money laundering fraud? So, Sheriff has mentioned about this digital, and Howard also mentioned about the fintech. Is there any more additional information about the vulnerabilities and in this growing market?
Actually, this is my personal opinion. Vulnerability of the digital currency or cryptocurrency is a strength. It's the same time. The vulnerability is you don't know you are dealing with whom, where. This is a vulnerability on it, but it's a strength. So it's depend how you are going to look it about it. Digital currency, Bitcoin, it's very high. What if Bitcoins disappear tomorrow or right now? Where is your money? Who will get your money? This is vulnerability. You are taking risk. So if you are going to deal with digital currency, you must be a very high risk taker. So if you are a risk taker, don't ask about the vulnerability or what is the fraud. If there is a fraud in this, is there a money laundering? Because digital currency is using now in 99% of fraud, and the laundering is using digital currency. They are going to, it's almost used by 100% in money laundering and non-fraud. So don't ask me if it's safe to deal with criminal or not. This is it's not a good question to ask it. I'm going to deal with some criminals. Is it good? Is it safe? This is not a legal criminal. Yeah, of course, this is not a question to deal.
Additionally, I would
Sarah?
Additionally, I would like to say, if you look at the cryptocurrency, so unlike the traditional currencies, cryptocurrency in most jurisdiction is still not regulated. So as Sheriff had brought out, is that, I don't know if it was Sheriff or Gizan, is that the regulatory framework is often times behind what is actually happening in the environment. So basically, if I was defrauded, or if something happened and I was trying to investigate a digital currency fraud or something to do with AML, basically there's no regulatory framework to support me. Unlike if I was dealing with traditional currencies, I could easily go to the central bank and there's a framework there is laws, there's cybercrime laws that can be able to support it. So again, what is the key vulnerability is the fact that the regulatory framework is, let me say, eons behind, and it's just at this point that it's catching up.
Right. I would maybe add also something to Stella. It's a very good point, is that obviously the regulatory under crypto regulation differ from different parts of the world. As mentioned before, some countries have a more positive or more crypto-friendly approach than others that are restrictive or completely banning it. But I think in terms of the vulnerability, we talked about how important, and Stella mentioned, to have a program, to have the methodology or the checks in place. But when you talk about cryptos, I think is really to work, if you're dealing with crypto companies or cryptocurrency, to have a risk-based approach, a crypto AML program, which encompasses the specific risks related to those cryptocurrencies. And you have those cryptocurrencies, you have the stable coins. I mean, there's so many other aspects, and having I believe a solid crypto AML program with sections from the customer due diligence, transaction monitoring, the sanctions, or the training needed, you would limit those risks related to an environment that very often sits on a gray zone. So.
Yeah, if I may add on top of that, Murad, is that actually those activities are anyway high risk. So we can use the risk-based approach and put them on the high risk activity. And depending on actually, I would say the country, add some criteria. And on top of that, we can always use the traditional compliance AML and always try to, for example, have a trigger that would put them directly in enhanced due diligence and not only due diligence. Because first of all, they are new, and as has said Sheriff, if you take the chance in a crypto or stable coin and not a fiat currency, you already are a high risk taker. So already the market sees them as a high risk activity. On top of that, as said Stella, indeed, the regulator always come behind. They do not anticipate the regulation. It's very difficult, I think, for many reasons, to always anticipate the new coming activities. So indeed, I think we can always lay down on the traditional risk-based approach, AML, and try to use the controls that are already here and customize them depending on the activity.
Yes, interesting. So I can highlight the high risk. High risk is high return. From browser is a good point. So I will also ask about, there's some questions here. Is the shell companies also known as zombie or ghost companies? Is it the same entities, or who would like to explain more? Maybe Stella or Ghislaine? Do you have any opinion about it? The zombie companies.
So I've not heard of that term. I don't know if Gizen has heard of it, but no, I have not heard of shell companies being called zombie companies unless it is particular to a region. So I don't know if any of the other panelists have heard of the same.
No, I haven't.
Is this,
Edita?
no, this is my first time to see zombies companies. I hear zombies movies only. I didn't hear companies yet before.
Okay, yeah. It's interesting. So maybe the participant who asked can explain more about this. What do you mean about the zombie companies? Okay, I will move maybe the last question that we can discuss together. How fintech? So I will maybe start from Howard again. How fintech can detect frauds in the financial sector? With your expertise here, can you give more insight and what we need more to do? I think we have based on regulatory, we left behind. So what can we do now?
Yeah, sure. It's a good question. I think for the last few years, we've seen a lot of improvement from the regulators and also the entrepreneurs in the fintech space and their sandboxes, where basically You have those early startups working directly with regulators in different parts of the world. You know, in the US, you see that in the UK or the Middle East, and they really work in their product development with those regulators before going live into the market. So this is very positive. And I think you know, what we've seen in the past is sometimes, you know, you've had regulators, and it's always moving. There's more and more regulatory requirements or compliance requirements that goes. But at the same time, there's the speed at which you know, the innovation is going. It has to work together. You know, you have to have innovation and regulators working together so that you have things that are appropriate to measure the risks for those fintechs or for the regulatory environment, the industry as a whole, to mitigate the risk of money laundering, the risk of terrorism, or the risk of fraud. So I believe that fintechs really have to have an approach to maybe be proactive also in embracing and getting more preventive with their compliance, and not being, you know, sometimes come in and say, okay, now it's the problem, how do we resolve? But have a preventive approach to put the right, and Stella mentioned the right policies, the right program in place, to have the right approach on a strategic and also on a tactical level. So I think that's what makes a difference, to be agile. The teams need to be agile because they're small, and we're not, you know, talking about, you know, a large financial institution where you have armies of compliance officers or jurisdictions or solutions. But here, the solutions and the fintechs are very different. You know, the use of some of the vendors, the legacy solutions, would not work in the fintech space, because maybe what they need at an early stage is just the onboarding aspect to it. So I think it has to make sense, of to have a common sense of approach depending on the size and the stage at which the fintechs are. And I believe communication is the key.
Thank you, Howard. So what do you think, Sheriff? This is your last chance to give what we need more.
I will confirm 2 points actually was from Stella. That is, first, all the organization must have policies and procedures to detect suspicious and fishy activities and prevent money laundering. We have to start it from there. You have to know your business. What is your business? How you are going to start it? And then the second point, which is very, very important, is a human being, because 70% of the mistakes is coming from its awareness. We don't just put some policies and procedures. We have to give the awareness to them, and not just give the awareness. We have to measure the result of this awareness. If the people understand what we are going to say, is they change it, if they are going to understand what is the money laundering, how we are going to detect it, how we are going to prevent it, because at the end, as we all said, it's human beings who are going to deal with all this, with all system, with all tools, with all red flags. It's against the human beings. We have to keep them learning and to give them understanding what we are saying.
Thank you, Sheriff. That's why PCB held this event, right? To give more awareness. So Ghislaine and Stella, Ghislaine, what is your what we need more to do?
Well, if I may, I think more than human being, actually, I think that the company has to be ethic culture. They should improve and promote the cultural ethic. That is one of the issue of, I would say, that our era, neither only fintech, neither cryptocurrency, it is all the banking, financial institutions industry. And that is something that should be supported from top to the top down. I mean, if the board and the committee is not aligned with the culture and the ethical behavior, you will never be able to have anyone in the bottom up that will be following this path. And that is something that sometimes we kind of forget, is that actually ethics, if it is fighting corruption, fraud, or money laundering, or financing terrorism, is always about human being and the integrity that goes through that. And it is something that I think sometimes we kind of forget when we work on our procedures and policies. because we are so sure that we'll make it work. Sometimes we do not have the approval of the top management. It can be a difficult time.
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much, Giselle. And the last one, Stella. So what we do more? What we need to do more, please.
So something I've seen in this region is that fintechs have now started to create forums for information sharing. So just as my fellow panelists have brought up, is that communication is key. So what happens, or rather, what I've seen with fintechs is that especially where you have shell companies or somebody setting up a scheme to defraud, you might find that they will take advantage in one fintech and go to the next and go to the next. So creating those platforms where fintechs can actually share information and share the type of frauds that they're experiencing helps you learn better from other fintechs rather than waiting for the time when you are going to be hit. So I would say that is key. Another thing is that from this region, what has started to happen more is that independent assessments by the regulator have started happening. And this has sort of forced the fintechs into a space where they have to keep looking at their fraud management framework. How am I preventing? How am I detecting? How am I creating awareness? And it has, to some extent, upped their game, because sometimes people only respond to compliance-based requirements. So I could say that, key is the collaboration, information sharing, so that you are not being hit multiply, and learning from other people, and also just focusing towards compliance.
Okay, thank you. Wonderful. We have very, very fruitful discussion here. I believe we need more than an hour to discuss about this topic. However, the time is over. Maybe next time we will discuss again about the zombies companies, about the ghost companies, and everything about these shell companies. It's very interesting. On behalf of PCB, I would like to say thank you to all panelists here and also the participants who joined this session. Thank you, PCB, to organize and have all of us here. See you on the next event. Have a nice day. Keep healthy and happy. Good night. See you again.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so
Bye-bye.
much, Sheriff, Howard, Gizlen, and
Bye.
Stella. Have a
Bye,
nice
everyone.
day.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Bye.